What's up, folks? Casual Dad here, and Trogdor here, since I'm talking X-Wing content. And I just wanted to go ahead and run through the list that I ran at Worlds. And when I say Worlds, I do mean Adepticon, but I competed in the last chance qualifier. I didn't actually compete in the main event, so I should be really clear about that right from the outset. It was my first event of anywhere near that size, and only, I think, my fourth competitive tournament, so pretty excited to go into it. I actually prepped for this one and got a lot of practice in, so I was really proud of that as well, and then spent a lot of time building a list that I wanted to compete with. So I'm going to run through the list that I built, how it went, and then I'm going to talk through all of the other lists I ran over the week, because there are only a handful, just to talk through them. And then I wanted to finish on how I would actually change this list moving forward. So without further ado, here we go. So to start, this is our Yasby.app page. I started with Wedge Antilles, the Battle over Endor Wedge, who's pretty much all the new hotness right now. Big thing about him, he gets the defensive buff from It's a Trap, so he'll reroll a defense die if they're more friendlies than enemies at range 0 to 1, not including himself. And then he's got Advanced Proton Torpedoes for the 5 die attack at range 1. He's got R2A3, so once per game, I believe after he performs an action, he can just get a free target lock. So this is an Initiative 6 Advanced Proton Torpedo Carrier that can get a focus lock on any turn at will once per game. But his abilities changed. So instead of the classic Wedge ability where he will reduce the defense dice of an opponent that he shoots at, his ability says when you perform an attack that hits, after you perform an attack that hits, gain 1 focus token. And then this also has a built-in S-foil, so you don't have the configuration with this guy. Instead, you have the boost action, and it's a nice action bar. He's got focus to red boost. He's then got barrel roll to red focus, and then he's just got a white boost. But whenever you boost, you gain a deplete token. So if you do boost into range, so he can focus, boost, lock to get into range 1 for that APT, but if you do, the exchange is that you take a deplete. So instead of rolling your 5 die attack, you're rolling 4. Now it's still really good, but if you can do it without boosting, it's better. Or you could bring weird tech like I did, and I went ahead and brought Magva Yarrow in the U-Wing with Fen Rao Crew. And just to go ahead and recap that, Fen Rao Crew reads, before a friendly ship at range 0 to 2 engages, if its revealed maneuver is 1 speed or higher, and there's an enemy ship in its forward arc at range 1, that friendly ship may remove 1 non-lock red token, such as a deplete token. So I brought Fen Rao Crew in testing specifically for this wedge to make sure I could get those 5 die haymakers. It's a little bit of backbending to make that combo work, but it felt really worthwhile because Wedge is a really, really heavy hitter. And when I tested this just a little bit, I found that it actually was really useful for my entire squad. Fen Rao Crew is now a staple of both my Rebel and Scum squads and does a remarkable job kind of supercharging everyone and really opening up everyone's dial. Which, on that note, once I played with that a bit, I also really, really enjoyed Leia Organa Crew, who has that every 3 turns. She's got 3 charges that recur 1 per turn. At the start of the activation phase, you may spend 3, and then during this phase, each friendly ship reduces the difficulty of its red maneuvers. Now that is regardless of range, which is amazing, and it recurs, so you can actually do it multiple times in a game, assuming Magva is still alive. And just to go ahead and talk about it, because people don't see the U-Wing very much, Magva Yarrow's ability reads, while a friendly ship at range 0 to 2, same range as Fen, defends, the attacker cannot reroll more than 1 attack die. So the whole concept behind this list was I've got a heavy hitter and an I6 in Wedge who will shoot before most things and can take a punch because he has the extra shield and also hits really hard with those advanced proton torpedoes. And then I've also got the 2 durable fast pieces in Sabine A-Wing and then Tycho A-Wing. That's custom Tycho, by the way, and not Sabine Tai. And then it backs all of it backs up with Hull Oakland, the Battle of Yavin Y-Wing, who also has an advanced proton torpedo. Now, all of these ships benefit a lot from both Fen Rao Crew and Leia Organa, and the trick here is to have a bunch of fast objective runners, a couple tanky pieces in the U-Wing and the Y-Wing, and then something in between in Wedge that all can take a hit and can dish a hit out. Because I went into this prepared to face... we talked about this on the way up. The list that I figured I was going to face was a bunch of Empire, especially the new Battle over Endor or Empire, and most of my practice was against Jend Invader, Vizier, and Tomax, the 4-ship Empire list that was kind of the hotness when we were practicing. And then also I knew I was going to go up against some kind of resistance salad. I knew there was going to be a bunch of other Empire, almost certainly including Decimators, and I was fairly certain I would see a bunch of Rebels either running the Battle over Endor B-Wings, Gina and Braylon, or the Han. I fully expected to see Han list still, and we all kind of knew that Republic was still going to be kicking around. Spoilers. So those are all kind of the things that we were preparing for, that we wanted to see. And of course, in practice, I did actually see some of that, which is new, because usually when I do practice for a tournament, I see everything other than that. So just to talk through it, how did I do? Not great. Better than I could have is kind of the first way to go about it. Let's see what I've got on tab number 2, just to go ahead and... Yeah, okay. So I did want to go ahead and show a slightly better visual look at this list, so you can kind of see the abilities in here and kind of look at them at a glance. So the first one was Yasby.app, which is just a much cleaner, very printable version of the list. But to get the full visual appeal of the cards and actually see all of the abilities on the pilots, I do like Launch by Next. And Launch by Next is the app that I use on my phone for the bulk of my squad building. So I wanted to show this one too. Still kind of all there, you can kind of see what it all does. Just to highlight a couple of these upgrades, I wanted to talk about the things that worked really, really well. So Wedge was good. He's a little bit cursed, where every single game where I got the APT off, he also died. Because to get into that position, you really, really have to go for it. Oh, and this is incorrect. He has 3 shields. Yeah. So, well, actually, is that marked correctly in Yasby? Yep. Ooh, Andre. Calling out Andre Lind, who is a hero for making Launch by Next. But anyway, so Wedge has the extra shield. He gets the focus token back when he hits something, so he can spend a focus and still have one for defense. Having boost and barrel roll built into his action bar is phenomenal on that chassis. It was great for an X-Wing. I enjoyed flying that. But the real challenge I found, and something I looked at later, is that I really missed the option to take R4 Astromech. I believe it's R4 Astromech. The one that gives you the blue hard turns. Those blue hard 2s, you really, really miss that. Because there were a number of games where I found that Wedge got out of position, either because of a block or a misplay on my part. And then it was extremely challenging to recover if I wasn't able to clear the stress. And especially if you get, as I did, if you get the crit where he is stressed and then gets the crit that gives him 2 additional stress. That's flat out took him out of a game once very, very early. But we'll get into that. So Wedge worked well, but he was somewhat clunky and challenging to use. Hull was a 3-point monstrosity. I absolutely loved flying Hull. He's just a very reliable, tanky piece who died a lot, but I believe in every single game made his points back. Yeah. Tycho A-Wing is a 4-point A-Wing, even in the custom version. And his pilot ability is while you have 2 or fewer stress tokens, you may perform actions even while stressed, which makes him really good on objectives, especially with the A-Wing dial, where he can do the sloop and still take an action. And he can usually link that. So he can do an action and then link that to the boost with the chassis ability of the A-Wing. So I love Tycho, even though it's 4 points. And this feels very much like a Tycho. This is the build that defines Tycho for me. He's got elusive for defense, but then he's got Daredevil. So when he does a white boost, so not the vector thrusters ability, when he does a white boost, instead of doing a bank, he can do a hard turn, which on an initiative 5, if you're jockeying for position, is amazing. You can just rocket this guy up here with 2 5 straights and then pull a hard turn and really surprise opponents just by being able to do that. Even if they see the upgrade, people do forget that he can do that. But yeah, and you can do that and then still perform normally, even if you do a white maneuver. So you can't do double actions on the turn that you Daredevil, but I still found Daredevil to be incredibly useful in various different games on this flanker. And since I knew I was going to be up against a bunch of chonky things like I thought Falcons, and then also Decimators and Arcs, the HLC is a really, really good piece to put in this list. So one of my fast, dodgy flanky pieces also can put out a lot of damage. And then Sabine, if you have not flown Sabine A-Wing, you owe it to yourself to try it. She is the tankiest tank ever created. It is ridiculous. Over the course of the weekend, she tanked so much damage, and I honestly don't know if I ever lost her. She's incredible, because she's got built-in Fearless, she's got built-in Concordia Face-Off, the 2 Fang abilities, and then can take all of the Mandalorian upgrades. The one thing she's really missing is cluster missiles, because she would be dumb with cluster missiles. Because her ability doesn't say perform a primary attack, it says perform an attack. So she could potentially fire off 2 cluster missiles and then have both of them have an automatic convert to hit. She's crazy, so that was really happy with her as a piece. Now Magva, I will go ahead and say that she was probably the most disappointing piece in the list, in large part because I flew her badly. I'm going to talk about an actual practice game that I did here, but what happened with Magva is I had her ability out and she impacted a couple rolls here or there, but throughout the week there were a whole lot of people just throwing eyeballs. And if someone's got a focus token and they throw 5 eyeballs, which happened once or twice, Magva does nothing because they can just focus mod it. So that was a huge challenge. Since so many attacks are double modded, removing one of the 2 mods can be really effective, but you really do need a way to remove both. More on that later. That said, Leia Organa was incredible, having all of these ships able to do a red maneuver as a white, up to, I believe I did it 3 times per game once, although I wasn't great. And then Fen Rao Crew on there, of course, to make sure that Wedge combines his mobility and damage, Hull can clear that stress and just keep trucking along, Magva herself can do a red stop 2 turns in a row, and then Tycho is able to still do the occasional red maneuver even while he's stacking up stress tokens. Is just, I love this list. I love the way it flew. It was really, really fun, and I really think there's something here. I think a better pilot could have probably gotten more out of it than me. But let's get on to that. So again, I played in the LCQ, the last chance qualifier for the last chance to get an invitation into the formal World Championship event. It had a massive attendance. I believe over the course of the last chance qualifier and the actual World Championship, there were over 400 different individual players, which is bonkers. So if you want to go ahead and read the spoilers, go ahead. We're going to see some pretty famous names on this list. Just to run through the rounds, in my first round, I wound up against the famous Andrew Pineapple, who I had never seen before. I'd never met him, so I sit across the table from this guy and go like, "Hey, how's it going? What's up? What's your name?" He says, "Oh, Andrew, you may know me as Andrew Pineapple." And I was like, "Oh no, Andrew Pineapple. I dropped a pineapple on you, pineapple emoji on you." That almost got dark. I dropped a pineapple emoji on you in Discord this morning, and we had a funny chat about that. We initially wrote Andrew Pineapple on his score sheet, but then just because we were concerned about scores being recorded correctly, we actually spelled his name correctly. But he was the first person out of the week who confirmed for me, once again, that Canadians are simply the best people. Sorry, Fun Walk. And through this, I have to apologize. I'm going to be dropping a lot of names. One of the really exciting things about Worlds for me is I've been listening to the podcast and watching the YouTubers and in the Discords and on Reddit forever. So there are a lot of names that are very familiar in the X-Wing community who are at Worlds this year. And these are people whose names I've been hearing for years. And I may just be some rando player, but there's definitely a little hero worship when I was like, oh my god, you're this person. So I was a little starstruck throughout the day. So Andrew Pineapple is someone whose name comes up all the time. He's definitely a pillar of the community, if somewhat of a stealth one. He tries not to stand out too much. But also, again, really hammered home that Canadians are the best people. So I really enjoyed that. So he ran a resistance salad, so I'll go ahead and take a look at that. And this is something that I'd actually researched on the way up, so I knew what these pilots did. I had a bit of an idea what I was up against, and just kind of set up the way I normally would, relatively carefully, making sure Magva was kept back a little bit, and that my A-Wings were ready to take flanks. It was salvage, so we had to get a bunch of those crates, and then I kept Hull and Wedge a little bit back and kind of in flanking position so that they could go ahead and jump in and use those APTs when they could. We had an absolute bloodbath of a game. Andrew took up a pretty dramatic, commanding early lead, but then I was able to pick off a couple key ships. I believe I killed both Shasa and Chorus, both the Y-Wings. There was one clincher moment right at the end, so time had just been called. I had just spent a couple turns dropping crits on him and then flanking around behind, so my A-Wings and I believe Hull all had crates, and I'd knocked a couple crates off some of his ships for a couple turns. And then I think Wedge actually had flanked back to get a crate as well, but I don't remember for sure. But we ended up in this little scrum in the back, and there's a moment where he went to do a boost, the red boost, with one of the Y-Wings. We went ahead and did it and then rewound it because we realized that Y-Wing had a crate. So that was the first move. I believe it was an I2 Y-Wing. It was going to move. And because it couldn't boost because it had a crate and he hadn't dropped it in the system phase, that blocked both Poe and I want to say Elo, who were both the living T-70s that killed Temin. It blocked them both back into this tiny corner, so neither of them had an arc on Magva. Shaza did, and Magva was on one hull. And Shaza blanked out, and then Magva's return fire was able to kill Shaza, and that we totaled up the points, and we tied. Round one, we tied, and we looked at each other and went like, because we were assuming at the time, based on how few slots there were to get into Worlds, that a tie meant we were just out, both out. And on the one hand, I was really proud because I'd been losing all game and had finally pulled out enough points to actually tie it in the final turn, right there, through a combination of I did make a couple smart decisions, but a lot of it was definitely luck. And Andrew missing that boost really kind of saved my butt, because if he'd killed Magva, I wouldn't have killed Shaza, and he almost certainly would have had the points to carry that one out. So I did feel bad, but after this game, neither of us had a record to continue, so it ended up being fine. But that was pretty funny. To have our first game be an unintentional draw was pretty wild. And over the course of the games, over the course of the day, that didn't happen to a lot of people. So, but yeah, this was an interesting resistance list. Commander Poe and Temin together are a really effective piece to kind of command the rest of it. Chorus and Shaza were really good objective runners, great on salvage, so this was an uphill battle for me. I had some good objective runners, but a lot of my stuff likes to stay in a bubble, and my A-Wings don't want to flank too deep, especially when there's as much stuff on the board as you get with a resistance mixed list. So yeah, there was that. That was round one, great time. Round two. Now, I did really like all the Canadians I met. Canadians are the best people, I'm going to go ahead and say that. But it's real close with Funwalk. If you've never met Funwalk, try to. He is a delight. And we had a lot of fun just chattering at each other all game. You can already see the spoiler, I lost this one. This game was actually the worst pasting I have ever taken in my X-Wing career. And I should have expected that. Funwalk is a very good player. He's been playing for a long time, but he was just so nice and fun and friendly. We had a great game, and I'm not saying that that necessarily threw me off, but I did not to get flattened with such brutal efficiency. So Funwalk ran a list from the Sith Taker Open. It was 3 Black Squadron Aces, Rear Admiral Shiranu in the Decimator, and then he had standardized loadout Tomax from the Bomber Pack, and then last he had Vizier with Palpatine. And this one was... Oh, what was the mission on this one? This one was Area Control, I believe. Yes, Area Control. So again, a really uphill battle because his list had 6 ships. So he had me up on ship count. He also had a Decimator, something I had to deal with, and a very fast medium base in that Vizier. So this was probably the most favorable matchup for him. And then he also had those 3 ties in the back field that were able to just, like, keep on the objectives. Yeah. On this one, I got a little bit aggressive, and this is a typo. I feel really bad about this. When I submitted my list, I was all proud of myself because I was like, you know what? I got to tell Andre Lind at Launch Bay Next that he's got the points cost wrong here, or the loadout value wrong here. Only significantly later did I realize that I had submitted the wrong U-Wing pilot, so shame on me. If anyone knows a way to change that in here, I would love to set the record straight, because I did not run Benthic, never had Benthic. I had the 2 printed copies of my list. One went to the judge, one was shown to each of my opponents. I definitely did not run Benthic. But yes, that's what it shows there. So Magva went in with Hull and Sabine to challenge Vizier and really beat the heck out of Vizier and almost brought him down. And then Wedge flanked, or Tycho, flanked around the back to try to get an angle on Rack. And so I had Hull kind of in between Vizier and Rack to try to bait Rack into the APT range. I had Wedge over in the corner there, so they were both going up against Rack. And Tycho was flanking with a dream shot with his HLC to start just peppering damage into Rack from a side. Jammed in, daredeviled in to get that great shot. And I did not expect how quickly the Black Squadron Aces were going to come in, and I did not expect how many blanks I was going to roll. And Tycho was just wiped out in a single round from shooting from Black Squadron Aces. that's a bummer. And then a couple turns in, Rack was slow rolling a bit. I slow rolled as well. And then in one turn, I went just a little bit faster to try to get in range with the APTs on both Hull and Wedge, and Funwalk called it. So there was a bump, range 0, so neither Hull or Wedge were able to get off their APTs, and that's one of the big moments where Wedge not having the blue hard turn really messed him up. Took a little damage, then took the crit that gave him the 2 stress tokens, so he's sitting on 3 stress, trying to turn around this Decimator that keeps kind of bumping into his face. Yeah, that was brutal. And I lost Magva the turn before I could have done the white K turn with Leia. But up until then, I hadn't been able to do it immediately because Funwalk had the Tomax right behind. He had Tomax right behind Rack. So there was this chunk there that I had to kind of maneuver around to actually pull off a K turn to get around them. So got blocked out. Real bad. I believe it was 1-26 in Funwalk's favor by round 5. So that was fun. No, it was such a fun game. We had a phenomenal time, but wow, did I get wrecked. So lesson learned: never underestimate the lesson learned number: never underestimate Black Squadron aces. Stay back if it's an unfavorable matchup, even if you have to put pressure on the mission. Deal with Rack and focus on it. Only shoot at Vizier if you're sure you can chase him down. Because I put a lot of damage into Vizier and then he got away on 2 Hull, but fairly safely. There was never a question of me actually taking him down or doing that extra 2 damage. So don't engage with the Reaper unless you have something that can chase it or you can trap it. But do engage with the Decimator because it can't run anywhere. And if you take that thing down, you've got an extremely strong advantage against the rest of that list. But that was going to be a tough one just because of the mission and the number of ships. Even if I'd taken that Decimator and Vizier, chances are I would have been so far behind on points because of the Black Squadron aces that even if I hadn't lost most of my ships, it would be very difficult to come back from that. So, yeah, but boy, what a great game. And I had a great time running into Funwalk throughout the rest of the weekend. So that was round 2. Round 3. So I am a outgoing, friendly person, but I also can be a little bit awkward. And it turns out so can Ken Gregory. We went in for a fist bump and handshake, mismatch, switched it back into the same thing. So we did kind of a fingery fist bump twice. So that was fun and something we both got very embarrassed about and joked about for the rest of the game. But Ken, I believe it was Ken Gregory. I apologize if I don't have everyone's name. I'm terrible with names unless it's something extremely memorable that I've seen in writing a lot, like Andrew Pineapple, or like Funwalk, that again is extremely memorable. I am so sorry for messing up the name here, but I'll go ahead and call you Ken. And he ran the Ray Falcon, which is a menace that has terrorized me in this game for a long, long time. So I have had some practice against Ray, but it's been a while. And in this particular case, I felt like I had a good matchup because of all the mods that Ray has. I was assuming that I could turn a significant number of them off with Magva, and that is where I was definitely wrong because of the volume of them that are not rerolls. They're just add a result and then reroll. So it did turn off some of those abilities fairly effectively, but I also lost Magva very quickly. And this was a common issue. This is one dangerous thing about Magva. She can go down quickly, especially if you try to be too aggressive with her. And in some cases, I try to use her as a blocker because in my test games, I've been very successful where you do an initial block, you tank some hits, and then you Leia and can either rotate in a place where ships aren't going to be, or you can do one of the 3 maneuvers that no one expects that ship to do and rocket out of there and then do a turn. And so in this case, that was called. This was actually a really, really close game where it was a long time for any ships actually died. So there was damage sort of being bled off of everything. And now Ken here was really careful with the T-70s. Very, very careful. I had a very hard time pinning any of them down, splinking damage off them, but most of my goal was to take down Ray. Because I knew if I killed Ray, that really would be a huge advantage in my favor, a big chunk of points, and that would take most of the heat off the rest of my list. And I did pretty well, lined up a bunch of shots, pumped a bunch of damage into Ray, but I believe she was able to sneaky sloop out of the final engagement and end the game with 2 Hull. And in that turn, she was able to pick off Wedge in the very final engage. Another one of those cases where he was stressed. I miscalled where Ray was going to be because I forgot about the sloop. Um, and then just had kind of an issue getting out of position. I want to say Magva actually survived that game. Actually, thinking about it now, I'd have to look up a picture to be sure. Um, but yeah, I did lose that one, but it was real close. I think the end ended up being by about 2 points because I was doing pretty well on the mission, which was the button beeping, because I had some low initiative no, this wasn't the button. What was this one? This was chance, which was really bad against Ray. So this is chance engagement. So another case where I had a bad mission matchup versus the list I was up against. I really should have been picking off the T70s, and I did, I think, get half points on several of them. That's what was going on. We kept getting half points, but weren't getting full points for the most part. I did get half points on Ray, but wasn't able to pull out the last little bit, and she did finish off Wedge to get the extra points there. So, good game. This is one of the games where Sabine really had a great game, where she jousted Ray, she jousted Elo, she jousted Temin at different times, and it was just impossible to deal with. Yeah, she was a tanky little monster who was one of my favorite pieces to run ever. So this was a great game. He definitely pulled it out there. There was some really excellent play and some very meticulous maneuvering that saved his butt several times, where I would have had more of an advantage here. But yeah, lost it. And he earned that win for sure. He played terrifically. Played an excellent game. And there was a moment, who has Pattern Analyzer? 9. There's a moment where he rocketed over a gas cloud, did I believe a 4K, and then was calling out that he was going to use Pattern Analyzer, and I was like, wait a minute, you cleared a gas cloud. You lose your action for going over an obstacle. And he said, no, you don't. I was like, wait a minute, what? So we called the judge and checked it, and this is something that I had remembered from old rules, that if you go over an obstacle, you lose your action step, which is no longer true. This is what I get for having a bunch of different editions all stacked up in here. So, my bad. That was the game where I learned where you can go over an obstacle and still have your action. So that was really effective, and that turn is where he put a bunch of damage into Wedge that set Wedge up to die in the end because of that K-turn into an action, into an attack on Wedge, kind of circling around those rocks. So I did not expect him to K-turn over that cloud because I assumed he'd lose his action. But I should have called that. So thoroughly outplayed on that. That was a masterclass in the maneuver options that are available to T70s, and I was outplayed. I just wasn't clear on where they could be, and that really had me out of position several times. So that was a great game. Round 4 and final. So at this rate, I am 0-2. Yes, 0-2-1. So I have 2 losses, 1 draw, no wins. And I go up against Hydromasaur. I don't remember Hydromasaur's real name, which is a bummer because he was a really fun opponent who I ran into a bunch throughout the rest of the week. And I love the name of this list. Rebels, no Han. You could tell he's been practicing for a minute. So he's got Luke Skywalker, the Battle of Yavin Luke Skywalker, who's another piece who I expected to run into quite a bit. Then Wes Jansen, the I-4 X-Wing that does a jam when he attacks a ship. And he's got swarm tactics on there to get things like bump their initiative up. He's got R4 Astromech for the easier turns, shield upgrade, and then of course the config. I was so happy to see that because Wes is a piece I definitely considered putting in the list as a way to deal with green tokens to kind of double down on Magva's ability. So love to see it, love to play against it. It was a good time. And then he absolutely swore by Nora Wexley Y-Wing, a 5-point Rebel Y-Wing. With expert handling, ion cannon turret, veteran turret gunner, and afterburners. Afterburners! I looked at that thing and was like, all right. And then Lieutenant Blount, and then, of course, Sabine Tai. And this was on the beep one, where you have to do the actions to knock the objectives. And this was one heck of a game. This was like a classic dogfight, where basically every single ship picked an opponent, and then they just chased each other around. So I believe I was too aggressive with Magva, and she went down early in this one, but in a way that was really, really helpful to me. So Tycho banked really hard up a side to chase down Blount in the Z95 and deal with a backfield objective. Sabine came around a mini flank towards the middle. Magva moved up the middle slowly. Wedge and Hole were kind of on the right. And then there were a bunch of rocks all over there. But what happened was Wes and Nora came straight down the middle. Luke arced around the side to kind of get a flank on me. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Yes. Luke flanked around to get a side shot on me, and Blount hung out in the back, and then Sabine was right over there with Luke in the side. Sabine Ty got pretty aggressive towards the front, so I set up Wedge to go ahead and dive on her and get the advanced proton torpedo shot. I figured should take the shot when I had it, whether or not it was an ideal shot, and if I could take out Sabine in this mission, that would have been a big advantage. So I set that up, and then Luke popped right in front of Sabine, and I was like, yes! And I pulled the thing. I did the thing. I did the move, focus, boost, target lock, remove the red token with Fen Rao, and just nailed Luke with that advanced proton torpedo and dropped him to hull. And dropped him to hull very dramatically in that first engagement. In return, Magva took the torpedo from Luke, took the jam shot from Wes, who actually shot first, and then took the double shot from Nora to take the primary and the ion cannon turret, which really did a lot of damage. So all of that combined did a bunch of damage. I was very surprised at the volume that came through. The combination of Wes shooting before Luke and then Luke getting the target lock. Very impressive. Might not have been a lock. It may have just been the focus. I think he actually did take the lock, so he had the reroll option. Yeah, okay. Yes. So we did that. Brutal. And then it was really funny. So Tycho flanked around the back and was just loading damage into Lieutenant Blount with the HLC and was just chasing him down. Wedge chased after Luke. Nora chased after Wedge. Sabine chased after Wes. Yeah, Sabine chased after Wes. And Hull just kind of chased around the middle, beeping the buttons behind people. So it was a pretty close game, but yeah, my ships actually started rolling hits in this game where they hadn't before. So I definitely had a dice advantage that I should not have had. So Magva died fairly early, but then I had this position advantage and had damaged all of the key pieces, so all of them were running. I never shot at Nora. I don't remember if I shot at Sabine or not. I think I tried to. But I killed Luke, I killed Wes, I killed Blount, and I got a bunch of objective points, and so fairly comfortably took this one out. So that was that. End of the day, I was 1 win, 2 losses, 1 win, 2 losses, and 1 draw. I had hoped to having a winning record, which I guess I kind of did, because I didn't have more losses than other things, but it was roughly 50-50. Had that tie been a win, or had I gotten 1 more win, I would have felt a little bit better about it. But they were all really, really good, very fun, fairly close games, except that one. Yeah, I just had so much fun that I did not mind my record, and that's how I ended up. So there we are there. After that, I did also compete in some side events. There we go. One of the big side events was the League game, where you could do the unconventional warfare, where you could either do heavy hitters or you could do the fighter aces and then have a series of perks throughout the different days of the event. So there were 4 total days you could do. Each successive day unlocked a different level of perks, and each perk you could use once per round, so you could use them multiple times. But I had packed my Scum list that was the alternate list that I was going to run instead of my Rebels. I really thought about running this. I still kind of regret not running it, because if I was going to have the record that I did, I might as well have run Scum anyway. Because I wanted to run Scum. The faction is my first love. I also love this list. You can see it still has... Oh, where are you? It still has Fen Rao crew in here on CAD. So just to run through this, it's the Mandalorian and the ST-70. It's CAD and the Rogue with proton cannons cut throughout Fen Rao crew in the title. It is Dirge in the Rogue with fearless proton cannons and contraband. And then we've got Dace in the Hawk 290 with marksmanship, Hondo crew, contraband cybernetics, and the title. And then, of course, we have Bosk with expert handling and marksmanship. This list is really, really fun because it's very tanky, has a bunch of durability and a lot of damage output that's very surprising, and just has a lot of tools. So between that Fen Rao crew and that Hondo crew, you can really do a lot with this at different initiatives, and I absolutely love the way that this list plays. And I definitely will be bringing it out again. However, the day before I was about to leave, after I dug through all my boxes and got all my stuff out, I realized that the league where I could get tickets in the side event was the Unconventional Warfare League. So to run it, I had to meet the restrictions for heavy hitters or for fighter aces. So I either had to have all small bases, which would mean taking out Mando and putting in probably 2 3-pointers, or it would mean, or I could have thrown Fen in there. or adding an additional large or medium base, because you have to have, for heavy hitters, you have to have one or two, at least one or at least two medium bases, something like that, and then no more than two small bases. So I had to really trim this down either way, and I was very grateful for my Lord and Savior, Lebo, because I'd already gone through all my boxes, already gotten all the stuff out, and I had my really streamlined play box that I was going to travel with, and I just needed something I could just grab, and I gotta say it, I am so glad that standardized Lebo was there. So I kept Mando, kept Cad, kept Dace for the toolboxes, but then I swapped out the other two, Dirge and Bosk, for the 6-point Lebo. So I had a large base, I had a medium base, and only two small bases. Now I didn't expect this to be particularly competitive, but it would use the restrictions of the league, and it was just easy to throw in a box and easy to travel around with. So I just really enjoyed that ease of play with this thing, even if it still meant moving a bunch of tokens around. This was really fun, and I had wanted to dust Lebo off again, and since this was just a fun side event, why not? I still have never fired a Seeker missile, but this was a good time and surprised a lot of people. Having the Mandalorian and Lebo in there is a lot of durability and some very weird stuff, where a Mando can really kind of pull off weird maneuvers you don't expect, especially with Fen Rao in there. And Lebo's really fast, which I actually really love in a large base ship, is having a dial like that, where you can do those 3 hards and 3 banks. Look at all the white on that dial. It's amazing. Doesn't have a lot of ways to clear stress, but so Lebo also likes Fen Rao if it can keep up. I did have fun with Cad. I really enjoyed Mando, and Dace was Dace. He had a fun time. So played a bunch of games here. If I can just kind of rattle off some of the things that I played against a Ghost. It was a Kanan Ghost with heightened perception that was shooting a lot, and then there was a custom wedge in that list, and then a bunch of other Rebel stuff. I was very relieved because I'd had trouble figuring out what the rules were for the side event, which side event it was, so a bunch of people showed up with lists that were technically illegal, but who cares? So that one had, I think, 3 large bases in it and the Ghost. And I don't remember what they all were. I think it was Wedge, Kanan, Sabine Tai, and then one other one. It's hard to remember at this point. Excuse me. But that was a tight game, but he got me. I believe I did take out Kanan, which I was very proud of, and then it was mopped up by the other pieces. I want to say that Custom Wedge did a bunch of work in that one, and it was really cool to see that, having just run Standardized Loadout Wedge for so long. Seeing Custom Wedge's ability just really, really mess things up was awesome. And he had R3 Astromech on there to acquire multiple locks, so that Wedge could easily throw, I want to say, he had plasma torpedoes around the board as needed, which was very effective with all my large ships and all my shields. So that was an interesting game. Really had fun with that one. Another game I played was against a double decimator list, which is in the last chance qualifier somewhere. I'll see if I can track that down, because that was the guy's competitive list. It just happened to work. In all of these, we made a lot of use of the heavy hitters bonus abilities, where there's once per round you can suffer a face-up damage card to roll 2 additional attack dice on an attack. If you're a large base ship performing an attack, you could also, if you were a large or medium, I should say, if you were a large or medium base ship defending at range 1, you could spend this once per round to have the attacker not use the range bonus. And if you were a large, medium or large base ship attacking at range 3, once per round you could ignore the range bonus too. So you can see how very, very effective the large and medium base ships could be, just throwing a ton of dice. And Lebo, with the passive target locking and the extra dice at long range, and then also that juke effect, had some real haymakers that were very satisfying. So I actually fairly comfortably beat the double decimator. I think I killed both of them, which is a little bit shocking because you don't expect to do that against decimators, but when you're throwing that many dice, it happens. Some of my other games were against double fire spray, Eamon and Kath, I want to say. A lot of bombs, very scary. I beat that handily once and then played it again and got completely wrecked by it in the follow-up game. So 1-1 against that one. But yeah, and those, I know I have other games, but I'm kind of blanking on what lists they were and what we played. But I will say one real bummer about the whole side event was just the X-Wing event was too popular. I spent something like 4 hours on that first day after the LCQ looking for a table to play on because there just was nothing available. All of the general play spaces were full, all of the convention halls were full, all of the X-Wing tables were being used by day one of the World Championship. Um, and yeah, and boneheaded me, I didn't bring a mat. Bring a mat if you're playing X-Wing, because you can just play on the floor somewhere. So there wasn't a spare mat. There were other players looking for places to play, but a lot of us were just aimless for hours and really missed out on some quality playtime there, which was a bit of a bummer. That sort of sapped a lot of energy out of me that day. But still had fun. Really enjoyed the games when I got around to them. Met some really wonderful people and just had fun. Next up, we did do a doubles event. Yeah. And in this one, I actually had a couple different lists. So I actually went to this planning to run Tycho, Sabine, A-Wing, and then I believe I still had Baby Wedge in there as the 3-point A-Wing. But I went ahead and switched it. I felt that in doubles, if I ran a 4-3-2 points cost, that it would put just a giant target on Tycho's back, and he'd be very tempting to take out. And he had not proven to be the most durable of the A-Wings out there. In part because he liked to do a lot of stuff that ended up without tokens, which is my bad. Excuse me. If you run HLC Daredevil, you want tokens. You want tokens, mods, and locks, which I need ways to pass to him. So, but yeah. So I ran Baby, so I switched it to do 3 3-pointers, right? So Holoken from Battle of Yavin, who I'd been running all week already. And then Sabine Wren in the RZ1 A-Wing. Sabine A-Wing is so good, so phenomenally good. I can't even describe how good she is. Yeah, worth it. Find the point. And then Wedge, Baby Wedge is a little murder machine with Predator marksmanship. That Wedge is so good. This 9 points is amazing. I had a really great time with this in the doubles tournament and really enjoyed it. And my doubles buddy ran Starter Vader, the Hate Afterburners one. And then he also had the standardized loadout Tomax. Poor Tomax. If you run Tomax in a list that doesn't have the usual kind of Imperial meat shields that he's used to hiding behind, that sucker dies real quick. We found that in a lot of our games that he really was the prime target and was burned down real fast. Yeah, the A-Wings and Hull were really good objective runners. Great little snots running out of the board. This video is getting somewhat long, so I don't want to go too into the doubles event. I am going to go ahead and do a longer video where I talk about the entire experience, but we're going to stick with the lists for now. So I will go ahead and skip that, which is a bummer. I will just say that if you get a chance to play a doubles event of X-Wing, do it. It was so much fun. I'll go ahead and get into it, whatever. And then we'll see if I remember to talk about it again in the longer video. We played another 4-round event with 4 different people just to kind of have sort of a mini tournament. And it was a short time, started somewhat late, but we still actually ran through it about, I think, half an hour over the total allotted time. But yeah, so first round I went up against the double fire spray guy. But this time he brought just Emmon and then Bosk with Dead Man Switch. And his partner was, he ran the Dooku, the Count Dooku standardized loadout Sith Infiltrator and the Initiative 1 Roomba, the HMP gunship, the one that when it shoots you, it can automatically then acquire a lock for a follow-up shot, and then if you are in its bullseye, you gain a strain. It shoots an Initiative 1, so it shoots last, so it doesn't really matter, but still, that little sucker did some work without ever sideslipping. I was shocked. An HMP that never sideslipped in the entire game. And then Dooku, we thought he was going to be easy prey, and he was not. So Vader and Tomax went after Dooku and kind of duked it out with the Roomba, and then I tried to tease out and flank Emmon and deal with that C95, Bosk. And that was just a crazy game where I baited out Emmon towards me, and then he arced into the middle and dropped a bunch of concussion bombs. And I had just been talking to this guy about how scary concussion bombs were. I love concussion bombs, but I don't usually fly A-Wings that only have 2 hull. And concussion bombs do damage under shields. So I wanted to bait him out. I wanted to do a little bit of teasing him out, get him to come after me, think I was going to go past him to a point where he could get out of the bombs. But he called my maneuvers exactly and dropped a bomb directly where none of my ships could avoid it. Hull didn't care. Sabine and Wedge both took 1 bomb, and then in the following turn, I was barely able to get Sabine out of the second bomb, but I wasn't able to get Wedge out of the second bomb. So he did 2-shot with bombs kill Wedge, which was bad. And then we definitely lost that game because they were winning on objectives too, and we hadn't managed to bring down Dooku, who was running around cloaked and doing some crazy, crazy stuff. So that was fun. I believe one of us did clip a rock, so we did have kind of that issue against us, but it happens. The second game was one of the weirdest games I've ever played, ever. It's against these really nice guys, and they had the first pair were Canadian. The Canadians are the best people. Just sorry, rest of the world, it's Canada. The second list was Chopper and the VCX, and he also had AP5 in the escape craft, running in the Sheathipede, running around with him, and then Poe, Flyboy Poe, the scary one, and BB-8, who I've never flown against. BB-8 pod. And I was intimidated by BB-8 pod. I was like, this thing's hard to catch, so I just rocketed Wedge in there, and Wedge just murdered that thing. And I was really cocky after that, and I figured we got it. So Vader and Tomax went after Chopper and the VCX. I sent Sabine kind of in there to help out a bit, and Hull was nearby there as well. And so they did this big long arc going around. We very nearly killed the VCX. He started turning back in, and then Hull got behind AP5 and was like, yeah, got this. I'm going to get the APT. And AP5 landed a masterful block and then continued to masterfully block for the rest of the game. So Hull couldn't get past him. Every time I called a maneuver to jump over or bank or do a short one, that little bugger kept going backwards, forwards, sideways, back, just all over the place, and was just constantly in the way. And Hull never made it out of there. He did not. He spent 4 turns up AP5's tailpipe, never got out of it until Poe just circled around and killed everyone. So Chopper was able to escape off the far side of the board, and then Poe really did sort of come through the middle, and over the course of 3 turns killed 3 of our ships. It was a sight to see, and I have such respect for AP5 and that silly Sheathipede. It was amazing. I don't even know what to do. Game number 3, we played against these 2 Polish guys who were so much fun. We actually almost had to like call the match a forfeit because the one guy had not expected him to get back into the game so quickly, and so it took him a really long time to come back. This was a ball, and they were both running First Order. It was Whisper Kylo, an SF, and then 3 FOs. I don't remember exactly which ones. I can look that up. Actually, let's go ahead and look that up right now. Where are we here? We're going to look at... I believe I just saw this too. Let's see, doubles. And these are some of the events I've done. Tournaments, doubles. Let's see if I can find this. Adepticon, X-Wing doubles. Yeah, one of the many Chris's. So let's see if I can find these. We were the Emperor's Best Dads Club. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. Spoilers. Actually, we did pretty well. 55. Look at that. View summary. Crazy Canucks. They beat us up with the concussion bombs. Technological Terror. Ooh, yeah, okay. And this is Papa's list? Okay, so no list recorded. Unhelpful. But anyway, so they had, I don't remember what it was. I know there was Midnight was in there, the FO. Midnight, Malorus, Lehuse. Lehuse was the SF. I should know this. And they'd Whisper Kylo. There was a bunch going on, and there was a lot of crazy stuff. That game was so much fun because we just spent the whole time just like, that was really dream doubles, where each team was like whispering together, like, what are we going to do? Don't do that. Why would you do that? No, don't do that. And that was the best part. And like, there was a lot of back and forth, and every time a maneuver was made, all 4 of us were staring, and then as the maneuver happened, everyone was like, oh shit, oh, pardon my French, I'm so sorry. Yeah, and there was a moment where the 2 guys were mostly conversing in Polish when they talked to each other, and they said, you know what, sorry we're talking so much in Polish, but 3/4 of what you don't understand is curse words, so yeah, it's fine. Would have loved to hear what they actually said, because there were definitely moments where we made a surprise move, and both of them were like, and then had to back up to converse a bit and see what happened next. But that was a terrific game. Again, this was such a dream demonstration of how good Wedge and Sabine are. Hull really is just a scary, scary piece. People don't want to fly in front of him. So his biggest advantage is he's fairly durable, has a decently open dial, and things just like will get out of his way. So you can area control to have them avoid the APT. In this game, I had a dream shot to do a nice bank and drop right in the face of that SF and drop the APT, and I clipped a rock. So I didn't get it off. But that would have clinched the game. We would have won it handily at that point if we'd killed that SF one turn earlier. We did end up taking it out, but not with the APT. And yeah, it had a whole nother turn to score and do a bunch of stuff before we took it down. But Vader was chasing Whisper Kylo around and doing a great job bullying him. Sabine, that little monstrosity, harried and chased down Midnight, the unmodifiable FO, and just wrecked him. And I think we also got LeHuse. They still beat us by 1 point, if I recall correctly, maybe 2. But they got us in the end, at the very end, because it was salvage, and Kylo dropped his crate because it took a crit from Vader. And then there was this moment where he was kind of running away because he only had, I think, 2 hull left. Vader was going to get him. And we were calling a longer maneuver. Instead, he did a very short one and barrel rolled in. So Vader was going to chase him but pick up the crate if he couldn't shoot him down, and got blocked instead. So didn't pick up the crate, didn't pull off the shot because it was a range 0. Kylo lived. So our plan had been get the crate, kill Kylo for a 6-point swing. And instead we were blocked out of that and did neither of those things. I was lucky enough to take down Midnight, which got us real close. But they still had us by, again, I think 1 or 2 points. So really close, phenomenal game. Some of the best X-Wing I've ever seen or played. The hull bumping on the rock notwithstanding, that was a bummer. But yeah, that was excellent. Final match, we're 0-3. We had a bye for the final round of the day. So we found another team that didn't have an opponent, and we just picked up a game with them and went ahead and just did it. And they were running, see if I remember this right, it was the same 3 TIE FOs for First Order, and then it was Fen Rao in the Fang Fighter and Bosk. And that game, I don't honestly recall if we won. Bye. We had the bye, so I don't even know there. I would have to double check that. I want to say we had them on the ropes. We were outplaying them the entire game, which I was pretty proud of, because that's not a matchup that's particularly good for us, because they had 5 ships and they had Fen Rao, the Initiative 6 Fang Fighter. But we did a lot of correctly calling their maneuvers, not clipping rocks, hey, and just doing really, really effective moves that were playing to the objective. But Tomax died very early. They played really strongly to the objectives as well, so we were winning all of the combats and picking off their ships, but we're always just a little bit behind on points. And so they did end up getting us in the end on that one too, I believe. But that was the game where Sabine bullied Fen. This little 3-point A-Wing jousted Fen Rao multiple times and came out of it the victor. And then Wedge again was just like, Wedge is a complete and total menace to TIEs. If you run against a lot of TIE SFs or TIE FOs, especially TIE FOs, or just plain old TIE fighters, Wedge will clean them up for you. Yeah, so that was great. So that was really good. Yeah, good times. So that was the doubles tournament. Last thing I want to go ahead and talk about is how I would tweak my list if I were moving forward. And so we're jumping to this. So one of the key things that I mentioned is that Magva's ability is really strong. I did it again. I did it. How did this? No, stop it. Magva. I need to make sure that's saved. Magva is really strong, but if your opponent rolls all eyeballs, it doesn't do anything. You want to be able to shut off both. So the thing I really, really missed in all of my games was another Initiative 6 shot, and especially Initiative 6 jam. One thing I would really like to do is play around with this a little bit. So this list, it still has Wedge, the Battle Over Endor Wedge, still has Hull, the Y-Wing, still has Magva in the U-Wing with the same Leia and Fen. I could tweak the 3-pointer a little bit because this list doesn't have Sabine A-Wing, but it does because it doesn't because I have Sabine TIE. I'm very set on always taking Sabine A-Wing if there's any way I can possibly do it, but in this one there just wasn't to balance the points. And the key piece I've added is Hera B-Wing. I6, a bunch of hit points. She's got a bunch of ways to mod shots here, excuse me. So I've got Predator and Fire Control System on there, but the key piece I've got on here is Jamming Beam, Hot Shot Gunner, and the Stabilized S-Foils. So Stabilized S-Foils reads that you keep them open, you can barrel roll lock. After you perform an attack, you may spend your lock on the defender to perform a bonus cannon attack against that ship using a cannon upgrade you have not attacked with this turn. So I've got Jamming Beam on there, so I can go ahead and do a primary shot. With the primary shot, I can use Hot Shot Gunner. Oh, is it Hot Shot Gunner? Okay, that is wrong. I can't use Hot Shot Gunner because it only... Oh, man. Oh, man. Caught out. So I have to completely change this around. Let's see, I'll take off Baffle, tweak this, because the other option is Suppressive Gunner. While you perform an attack, ooh, yeah. We're going to play with that a little bit more, I'll figure it out, but I think Suppressive Gunner is probably what I want. I can do Bistan. No, that's turrets. You have a lot of turret gunners. I may not even want a gunner. Anyway, the point is that you don't necessarily need the gunner piece. I'll figure that out. The key is that you do a primary shot and then you follow up with a jamming beam, so you both are doing damage, but then you're also removing tokens from your opponent. So you're stripping off those green tokens at initiative 6, either on the initial shot or on the jamming beam or both. Say your primary shot goes through, they have to spend the focus or calculator evade token to not take damage. You've done your job. Then you can go ahead and pass the lock to someone else in the list and they can follow up. Or you can go ahead and spend it to do the jamming beam to get another shot at removing that token, or removing the like a reinforce. So being able to pull reinforce off a lot of the ships in the game is really good, but the big thing there is to have something that throws out a bunch of damage and can back up Magva. So between that and Magva, you'd have two tanky pieces that are extremely durable, shooting at I6, and then that also can be followed up on with your other three or four ships in the list. So that is how I would build it for my next test. I haven't tested this. The other alternative option I've got is Rebel Fen at 5, Rebel Fen Rao with one of the torpedoes. So ion torpedoes is definitely tempting because if you ionize something, it also drops all of its locks, but it doesn't remove the green tokens. So what was it? Is it Mag Pulse? Let's look at this. Let's play around a bit. So let's see, instead of a gunner, ooh, no, actually, weapon system on there. We're going to tweak some of this stuff here. So we'll drop fire control system, which is a bummer. Weapon systems officer reads, after you perform a special attack with the lock requirement, you may acquire a lock in the defender. So you could mag pulse and then follow up with a jamming beam if you really, really need to strip tokens off of someone. Or you can primary and follow up with a jamming beam. But one advantage here with the mag pulse is you can fire the mag pulse, spend your lock. So, yeah, you could fire the mag pulse, spend your lock. Just thinking about this. I'll look into this. Anyway, the point of Hera is somehow to apply an Initiative 6 jam to go ahead and remove green tokens in addition to what you're getting, in addition to the defensive value of Magva. And I really need that to be an Initiative 6 because there's so many things out there that are Initiative 5, and you wouldn't want to shoot after them. You'd want to guarantee that you're shooting before them basically every single time. So I will tweak this and I'll get back to you. That's where we're at here. But anyway, that's the end of it. This has been long talking about the list and the games. Hopefully this was fun. Yeah, I have a bunch more content planned. If you are still with me, good job. Big things I want to do are talk about the Scum list. There's a lot to talk about. And then talk about my Worlds experience in general. That's going to be a very long ramble. And then I definitely want to talk about there was something else too. I want to talk about some other lists that I ran into and some tech there. No, so it's going to be Scum, and then it's going to be the longer kind of ramble, and then we'll go from there. Anyway, appreciate the time. Until next time.